Chapter 7. Emma stumbled back against the wall, one hand on her heart and the other barely able to hold the trembling flashlight. Was she seeing things now? After her wave of fear-induced paralysis passed, Emma flipped on the basement light at the nearby switch and looked up the stairs. That had been a kid, hadn't it? A kid in a yellow shirt and blue shorts, with a black mullet. Where had she seen that kid before? Then again, if there really had been a kid, well, it seemed impossible that her colleagues upstairs would have missed him. He was running pretty fast. If any of them were in the kitchen, the living room, or the foyer, they would have seen him go by. And if he went straight out the back door, well, even Emma down in the basement would have heard it bang by now. In other words, if there really were a kid, she probably would have been aware of her colleagues' reactions. Upstairs, nobody seemed to have noticed anything. Emma kept her trap shut other than to cough as she walked into a big cloud of Gary's acrid cigar smoke. She waved her hand before her face, grimacing to turn on a kitchen light. "The hell was that scream about? Say, the lights are back. You got the equipment in here yet?" Emma coughed again as she banished the cloud. "No, but..." "Well, what are you waiting for? Come on, kid. Time is money. Shut that light off, though. I don't want another fuse problem." She obeyed reflexively, insisting, "But that's just it." Glancing toward the doorway as Tom appeared to listen in, Emma told him and Gary both, "I don't think we're alone here." Tom frowned, his arms folding over his loose-fitting Hawaiian shirt. "What do you mean?" "I mean, I just saw a kid." "A kid? Where?" "Running up the stairs. You didn't see him?" Gary laughed. "Sweetheart, if I saw a kid running up these stairs, I'd have offered him your internship position for standing around. Now come on." The producer's free hand drew back to wind up for a totally unwelcome, 100% uninvited, incredibly creepy swat of the seat of her shorts. Time seemed to slow down. Emma's instincts, finely tuned to detect and avoid creeps, orchestrated a spring forward enough inches that his meaty hand missed her and instead swung lamely by his side. In conversation, at least, Gary didn't miss a beat, ignoring her anger-reddening face as he said, "Let's get this show on the road and get back to the studio. I got a complaint to level with Hamster and Kraft, or whatever it's called." With a resentful roll of her eyes, Emma let Gary lumber down the stairs before shaking her head at Tom. She didn't like to go into her feelings with coworkers, but she couldn't help it. What a creep. Sorry, I've tried to keep it to myself, but Gary's a real jerk sometimes. Tom shook his head, his hands sliding into his pockets with a sigh. "You're not kidding. I'm sorry you have to deal with him. Have you found any sign of that real estate agent?" "Nothing yet." "I wonder where he's at. Well, let me know when you have my camera out." Emma repressed a noise of annoyance as Tom wandered off into the house. What a clueless jerk. A little help would have been nice, even just the offer. Out on the lawn, Emma studied the contents of the van and the many black cases within. Dana stood near it, smoking a cigarette that she put out as Emma dragged the first black case out into the open. "This story is a load of bull," said Dana, apparently deciding they were friends now that Emma had twisted an ankle on her behalf. "What are we even doing here? You should see my script. It's total trash." "Well, I mean, it is sort of a puff piece." "Sort of?" Dana laughed harshly, glanced into the truck as though considering lending a hand, and then decided against it with a quick thought of her manicured nails. Her arms pumping at her side as she hurried after Emma to talk the burdened intern's ear off. The reporter lowered her voice to say, "You're damn right this is a puff piece. It's worth nothing. There's not a new piece of information in it. There's got to be a real story somewhere in this house. So many locked doors." "I swore I saw a kid running up the basement stairs just now," Emma said, eliciting a roll of Dana's eyes. "Oh, please, Emma. I thought you were way more down to earth than that. Ghost stuff? That's the kind of nonsense I'd expect Gary to come up with. He's probably planning to have you wear a sheet and run through the backyard or background of a shot or something. Just keep your eyes peeled, okay?" Looking conspiratorially around before stepping into the house and leaving Emma to haul the equipment by herself, Dana said, "Locked doors upstairs? The one missing a knob in the kitchen? I mean, come on. I don't think anything around here is what it seems. That was for sure. The knobless door had bothered Emma and still did. What was up with that? Was the Easter Ripper really some kind of sick game-playing mastermind? Had he really only killed 11 children? Only? It seemed like such a disgraceful word to use when you were talking about the deaths of children, the tortures and murders of children. Even so, anybody who knew anything about the Easter Ripper had the distinct sense he had more victims than were attributed to him. That boy in the yellow shirt, was he a victim of the Ripper? No wonder Emma had the sense she'd seen the boy before. He was probably one of those kids whose picture was plastered all over the news in the months surrounding the arrest and trial of Anthony Smith. It was an ugly, unavoidable story, and it wouldn't have surprised Emma to discover she had unconsciously absorbed the features of the kids' faces. In fact, that notion helped her rationalize why it was probably just a figment of her imagination rather than something like a ghost. Dana was right. Who could believe in ghosts, after all? After almost 10 minutes of hauling, arranging, dragging, and sweating, Emma had managed to get everything into the house. Another 10, and the lights were set up. "All right," said Tom, tweaking his camera settings a bit more before looking up at Dana with a placid smile. "I'm ready if you're ready." "Absolutely. Let's get this over with." Don't act so crucified." Waving his hand from where he perched upon a nearby packing crate, Gary dug a handkerchief from his pocket and used it to dab his forehead. "You're getting a free pizza for lunch. Not too shabby to be fed on top of your usual paycheck." "Don't patronize me, Gary," said Dana, adopting her even-keeled reporter voice. "I swear to you, one of these days I'm going to take this microphone and shove it up your—" "Can you move to the left?" Tom waved her over, glancing into the eyepiece of his camera while Emma picked up the boom mic. "That's better. Thanks." "Anyway, Gary," Dana switched to her normal voice and smiled in a manner intended to be charming, "I was thinking we could—" "I don't pay you to think, Dana. I pay you to read the goddamn script." "I hate this job." "Well, pull it together." Puffing on his cigar as he shoved his handkerchief away, Gary nodded to Tom. "We good to go?" "Yep. Lighting's great. Camera's rolling." "All right. Ready? Action." Like a trained robot or a dog whose job was to salivate at the sound of a scientist's grant purchase bell, Dana became a different person. All trace of her sardonic personality fell away. At once, she was a proper reporter, Channel 9's best and brightest, for whatever that was worth. Her cool tone slid professionally up into the boom mic Emma held suspended above her head from off the camera. "Anthony Smith, more commonly known as the Easter Ripper." Dana recited her script with ease, her memory sharp as a tack. Between that and her talent for reporting, Emma had to admit a certain admiration for the woman. It was just her attitude that was the problem. The mere mention of his name sends shivers up the spine of parents across the country, his horrible murder having left lives shattered and families ripped apart. With a look of dramatic intensity on her face, Dana slowly strode toward the camera while declaring, "Tonight we'll go inside the now vacant home where 11 innocent children spent their final moments in agonizing pain and terror. Untouched since those horrible crimes, some say his spirit still haunts the home till this day. I'm Dana Turner, and this is a News 9 special report. Silence Tears, inside the home of serial killer Anthony Smith." "Cut!" Gary waved his cigar, puffed it, nodded sagely, and said, "Yeah, that was good. Real good. Let's take a break." "Gary, I think I want to redo the line where—" "This isn't 60 Minutes, Dana. It's not even Channel 5. We're not here to win a Pulitzer." Her face contorted into a scowl. Dana said, "Fine. I'm going to find a place in this gross house to fix my makeup." "And I'm going to take a leak," announced Tom less delicately. "So you're going to have to look to someplace other than the upstairs bathroom you were planning to hog." Rolling her eyes in annoyance, Dana stormed toward the front hall. Emma glanced at the boom mic in her hands and lowered it upon a nearby cardboard box, watching as everyone else around her dispersed. It was strange to be behind the scenes of something like Channel 9 and learn how little work was really involved in putting together a story like this one. The truth was that Dana would end up actually working for about 3 or 4 hours on the whole report. She might do an interview or two, a little narration, and film whatever bumper scenes they filmed there on location. When it came to footage, Tom would get all the eerie background shots of the property that would play below her voiceover. The hardest part about being a reporter, it would seem, was working with people like Gary. Alone again, Emma was consumed by a shudder. She thought about poking around upstairs to see if the realtor was around, but the idea of running into another phantom kid freaked her out too much. And, frankly, if he hadn't shown up by now, Gary was right. The agent probably ended up needing to hitch a ride back to town for some reason. Instead of worrying about yet another problem, Emma followed Dana while thinking of their brief, almost friendly conversation earlier. Where had she gone? Upstairs? Not outside, surely. The only other option then was a squat little door posed under the stairs. Emma's aunt and uncle had recently sold a house with a little door like that. Another murder house, coincidentally, but that was another story. Such doors made her skin crawl, but at least to this one's credit, it was a little larger than the one that notoriously creeped out her cousin. Rather than the door for, say, a tucked-away boiler or storage crawl space, this one seemed more like a cupboard. Emma knocked lightly upon it and waited her guess soon paying off. "Gary? It's Emma." "Oh, thank God. Come in. If you can find room." No kidding. The little cupboard was cramped and creepy. The understairs space was illuminated by a bare bulb in the ceiling. Posed directly beneath it, Dana used a cracked mirror glued to the wall to reapply her red lipstick. Bedding had been arranged on the floor, and a pillow seemed to indicate it was once a makeshift resting place for somebody, or some kind of a prison. "I don't think I even want to know," said Emma, more to herself than to Dana. The journalist laughed and capped her lipstick, dropping it back into her purse before coming up with a compact of powder. "You won't get far in this industry with that attitude, but I know what you mean. Doesn't this place just give you the willies? I swear." She raised the puff and rapidly tapped her nose with flesh-toned powder. "As soon as we're back at the station, I'm writing a letter to Channel 5 to see if they have any job openings. I heard Krista Fremont is going on maternity leave soon, and I can't imagine she'll be back. The producers over there are better than Gary, but not by much. Isn't there somebody you could complain to?" With a wry but somehow sympathetic look, as if she had once pitied and envied what she perceived to be some naive lot in Emma, Dana clapped shut her compact and dropped it in her purse. With her newly free hand, she patted Emma's. "The sad truth, honey, is that in this industry, and probably a lot of others, women who complain don't last very long. You don't have to stand there and take it, but you should also be careful about protesting too loudly." While Emma suppressed a grimace at this painfully old-fashioned and oppressive piece of so-called advice, Dana smiled elegantly and returned to the mirror. Fixing her beehive, she said without looking, "Would you be a dear and fetch me a drink of water? I am parched." Fetch? Luckily for Emma, it was easy enough to turn on a set of gritted teeth into something resembling a smile. But even when they'd had a bonding moment, Dana had a way of really grating on her nerves. Emma knew the older woman meant well, but the reality was that Dana had made herself part of the problem at Channel 9. No wonder there had been so little competition to intern there. Anybody connected enough to the networks to even get an interview at Channel 5 probably knew that Gary and his producer buddies were creeps to be avoided. Speak of the devil, Gary rooted around in the cabinets of the kitchen where Emma had only intended to get Dana that cup of water. Emma managed a courteous nod, then went right to looking for a cup. This was a little more difficult than anticipated. A nest of spiders had moved into a portion of the counter where a few disgraced dishes still sat, never to be cleaned. Emma did not immediately see a cup in their midst, but she had to confess a certain degree of clutter blindness afflicted her. The counters were covered in odds and ends, ranging from appliances that were meant to be there to the contents of empty drawers, not to mention items that were taken from other rooms or moved during the course of the investigation. And as Emma struggled to parse the scattered odds and ends, Gary's watery eyes remained fixed on her from behind their sepia lenses. She only discovered this when she glanced his way, about to make casual conversation to break up the uncomfortable feeling of being in a room with somebody so silent. Whatever she was going to say, she forgot it beneath the skin-crawling stare. Gary fixed the collar of his pink shirt while saying, You've been doing a good job today, kid. Emma, she told him, and thanks. Her eyes flickered from him, and more urgently. Across the sink, she studied flower pots and mixing bowls, then at last found a somewhat rusty tin cup that had to be some kind of antique. Wrinkling her nose at it but finding nothing better, she switched on the water and tried not to grimace as the pipes groaned their protests. Taking advantage of the delay due to such a long period of disuse, Gary sidled closer. She willed the water to hurry. I saw you using that boom mic back there, he told her, chucking her in the arm with his fist and ignoring the way she winced. An evil brown sludge splattered out of the faucet, like the house had hawked a loogie. As a slightly less disgusting, but still decidedly brown, water came flowing out after, Emma gritted her teeth. Come on, get a little clear already. Her boss never missed a beat, his great form looming closer all the time. You were like a pro with that thing. Seems to me you're a natural in this industry. I don't know what to expect when you showed up, but you're proving more valuable all the time. No time to waste. She settled for tan as an acceptable color of water and filled the cup. Great, she said. Thanks. Emma shut off the water, grimacing at how hard the knob was to turn. She looked down to rectify her grip on it, adding additional pressure with her palm, and at last the valve was closed. And while she drew her hand away, she noticed the strange piece of metal lying along the back of the sink. The crowbar was nearly flush with the corner of the counter in the wall. She might never have noticed it if she hadn't been busy looking anywhere but Gary. Play your cards right, and this could be a big opportunity for you, the greasy idiot went on, breathing thirstily down her neck. If you see what I'm saying. Uh-huh, said Emma, mostly to herself. She had tuned Gary out almost completely, tuned the nonsense of her job out completely, and lifted the crowbar from where it discreetly lay. While she raised it and turned it around in her hand, Gary made a little noise like a nervous laugh. He stepped away so fast that by the time she turned around, he was already halfway across the kitchen. I'll be sure to keep that in mind, she told him automatically, forgetting the contents of what ought to have been grounds for a sexual harassment suit. While the producer's eyes whipped from Emma to the crowbar in her hand, Emma thrust the cup in his direction and said, Could you bring this to Dana for me? I have to go do something really quick. Oh, her boss said, so taken aback to be given a request by the intern that he didn't know how to respond as Emma pushed the cup into his hands. Well... Be right back, she said, hustling down to the basement that had once been terrifying but was now the subject of serious interest. This was what Dana was talking about, the real story. What was in that washer? Was there some invaluable piece of evidence that the police, oblivious to its existence, had left untouched since the crimes? Worse yet, for Channel 9, maybe better. Was it some kind of murder trophy thumping around in there? A hand? A head? The idea was awful but somehow exhilarating. If Emma discovered a thing like that, maybe the station would finally give her a paid position. Downstairs, Emma inspected the rattling washer and tried its locked door. For whatever reason, the cycle seemed to be stuck. They had been there easily an hour or more, yet the washer showed no signs of stopping. This crowbar was the only way. She might have kissed it if it weren't so rusty. Breath held, Emma slipped the prongs of the crowbar into the door of the washer. She had never had an occasion to use such a thing before, but it was easy enough to figure it out. A little bit of leverage, applied by leaning into the prior, produced a promising groan from the old machine. A few more pounds of pressure, and the washer produced an alarm as the door burst open. Emma jumped back, the crowbar slipping free from her hands without the door to provide resistance. As the washer's rotation came to a stop, the intern took a deep breath and bent to inspect the contents of the machine. A doorknob? Frowning, Emma removed the round brass object and turned it over in her hands. Yes, this was definitely a doorknob. But it dawned on her after only a second. Emma gasped, springing from the cold basement floor and letting the crowbar remain where it fell. With the knob clutched like a precious treasure, Emma rushed back up the basement stairs and through the now empty kitchen. The knobless door received its missing piece with promising ease. For just a second, Emma considered calling her coworkers to let them experience the discovery with her. But, well, did they really deserve to? Emma did everything they wanted at the drop of a hat. Even Tom took advantage of her from time to time, or at least failed to do the decent thing and offered to help her when she had a spare moment. The whole day that had been at the Smith house, Emma had done all the grunt work without a single complaint. Committed to enjoying the first moments of this discovery by herself, Emma turned the knob and let the door swing wide. On the other side, the dead bodies of her colleagues floated in a pool of blood.